Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. So there's a quote, or a saying rather, that a lot of people, whether they're American, Canadian, British, Australian, some Western country, there's often this term or phrase that they will use, which is my country, right or wrong. It's often seen as a rallying cry by patriots and nationalists. My problem with it, though, is that it's an incomplete quote. These people that I just mentioned tend to use this quote in the sense of, oh, you always got to support your country through thick and thin, right or wrong. But that's not the full quote. The full quote is actually more along the lines of, my country, right or wrong, if right to be kept right, and if wrong to be set right. This is attributed to a man named Carl Schurz, who was a U.S. senator back in like the 1870s. And that is a really good thing in terms of how one should actually operate. The problem is that people have instead taken just the first half of that, my country, right or wrong, which means, okay, let's take this to its logical conclusion then, right? So if your country commits war crimes, you're going to support it. If your country attacks, brutalizes, murders, commits acts of genocide against members of your own population, you're going to support it. My country, right or wrong. So if your country then decides to, I don't know, establish a military coup and take away your guns and your liberty and it's a tyrannical hellhole, you just said, my country, right or wrong. Well, it's still my country, so guess I support a fascist dictatorship now. That's why I've always been bothered by that notion of my country, right or wrong. No, if people are wrong, you should call them out. If your country misbehaves, you should call it out. You should try and discipline it if you can. And, the full quote is actually really nice, My country, right or wrong. If right to be kept right, and if wrong to be set right. This is a good quote to have. If your country is on the right path, great, keep it going, power to you. But if it starts slipping down a dark and terrible path, then it needs to be set right. And this is applicable whether you're American, Canadian, Australian, Japanese, South African, wherever you are. That is a principle that can and should be applied universally. It should not be used as some kind of cheap excuse to ignore terrible aspects about your country so that you can sleep a little bit sounder at night, wrapped up in the myth of your country's angelicness. Countries aren't perfect. They are, by the very nature of their being, imperfect things. That's why it is important to tell the truth of history and what your country is doing, and to acknowledge its shortcomings and work on them the way a responsible adult should. This notion of, oh, well, if you don't like it, leave, or shut up and don't be critical. It's not patriotic to be critical. That just doesn't make sense, because to be a patriot, you need to look past only the good things about your country and also look at the bad things and to address those so that your country can actually be made better and greater. A real patriot isn't going to just wrap themselves in a flag and, say, well, that's it. That's all that's needed for patriotism. Patriotism requires work and challenges. The people who fight for change and for progress are arguably the most patriotic people because they see something wrong with their country and they want to fix it and address it because they love their country. They see that it can be better than it is. And so just sitting there saying, well, whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, you should just support it, that is a very dangerous and frankly irresponsible thing to say and adhere to. And the fact that so many people around the West and around the world seem to cling to that as some kind of simplistic form when really they should be having a level of introspection for their country and demanding better of their country is definitely something that should be talked about more, and it's definitely what was bothering me today.